Right, this is Brett Simus, and I'd like to call to order the January 10th Board of Selectmen meeting for 2023. The first meeting, the first official meeting, not official, the first full regular scheduled meeting of the year. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Minutes here. Do we want to do the minutes quick in the 3 minutes we've got before we have the public hearing?
We can do that.
Sure, we can.
All right.
And now we've made
This is for December 6th and 20th of last year. You know, we had a couple questions and corrections.
Just the correction for me is on the December 20th meeting. The adjournment was December 20th, December 6th.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And the correction I'd like to just make is on the December 6th meeting minutes. It should be line 17. I can double check it. It just makes mention of tax classification hearing. And that is, in fact, we had a common vicular hearing.
Yep.
And then after that, we had the poll hearing. So I think we just need to clean up that discrepancy.
Any questions on those, Sandy? Okay. All right.
Other than that, all looks good to me.
All right.
I move that we accept the meetings of December 6th, 2022 and December 20th, 2022.
I would second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous action of the board. Thank you. And we're at Do we have to go into executive session tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Need a separate application for the common vic transfer? Because this would be just for the liquor license, right?
Yeah, the public hearing, there was a public hearing notice for both.
Yeah, I have two notices in the packet. It's just on the application, whether or not they would be second on the transfer.
Second one.
Would it be a separate?
Second one would be the common victory, right?
Right, so this particular one is just for the licensing?
Yeah, just because you need to sign it, yes.
Okay.
That's why that document's there. We generally don't have any documents for common vic licenses. You just make the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And do we need to just do each one of these separate? Because I see there's sort of two notices, or can I combine them somehow? The two legal notices.
Separately. Yeah, I would do them separately only
Okay.
because it's alcohol.
Yep. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 15A of the Mass General Laws that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 7:05 p.m. at the Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Upton, Mass. On the application of Maya Grill LLC, 118 Main Street, Upton, Mass. for an all alcohol beverage licenses, subsection 12, on premises consumption transfer from KB Holdings LLC, Inc., DBA 118 Main Street, 118 Main Street, Upton, Mass. The description of the premises is as follows. It's 4,600 square feet of space within the building located at 118 Main Street, an outdoor patio by the entrance. Updated hours will be Monday through Friday, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. and Saturday and Sunday, 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. All right. So Do we have someone here to talk about this?
I don't see those.
Okay. All right. So do we have any questions based on the application?
No, it's just a transfer.
I mean, typically on a liquor license transfer, we're kind of, it's a good idea, in my opinion anyways, to meet who the new applicant would be.
Yep.
Kind of get a feel for if they have experience in this particular line of work or not. And I don't see, I see the manager's name, but I don't actually see who the,
And, the manager is the same, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
the manager is the same that, transferred the license over at the Rose Garden. So it's the same, two people. The manager is, Indira. And he met them during the transfer of the Rose Garden license.
So the folks that bought the Rose Garden are purchasing 118 Main Street.
Just the business.
Just the business, right? Exactly, not the building. That suffices, great. If not,
nothing else is different. It's the same applicants as the Rose Garden.
Yes.
It was a husband and wife, is that right?
Yes,
Okay. What are your thoughts?
I'm good with it.
yeah, I don't have any concerns.
Okay.
The, are the hours significantly different than what the current hours are?
Yes.
I don't believe it's currently open some days.
I can tell you what's on the license. I mean,
The
I mean, the.
Yeah, I'm interested in what's on the current license
License.
versus what's on the new license.
Okay, look at this.
Yeah, because we're approving what's in the licenses. They sort of can work within that, you know, the same way they do over at Rushford. That would be the only thing that I see here that could be different. I just don't know how different it is, right? If we're going significantly more hours.
Right. And you know, the other applicant is Aquacado, and this one's Maya Grill LLC. So it would be helpful to kind of better understand some of those questions.
Yeah, it is a different LLC.
Yeah.
We're looking for the hours right now.
Oh, okay.
Take your time.
KB Holdings, 11:30 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Saturday. Holidays per ABCC regulations.
So this one's a half an hour. And 2 hours or 2.5 hours.
11:30 to 11.
Yeah, it looks like they basically want to open for breakfast on Saturday and Sunday, right? Or have that ability.
She did mention that they wanted to.
Brunch.
Brunch, yeah. So, okay. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
And then there was a question, Sandy, just while we're looking at it, the difference between the applicant for, well, the applicants are the same, Maya Grill LLC, and is this one Maya Grill LLC? So is there some difference, Steve, that I'm missing?
The Rose Garden is under Aquacado.
Yeah.
I think what you were saying is it was the same owners.
Same owners, different business names.
Yeah,
Different LLC.
yeah. So they want one restaurant under one LLC and another restaurant under a different LLC, I think is what the owners are probably doing, right? They want to keep them separate.
Separate,
Yes. But the people are the same.
same people.
The officers in the corporation, everything's the same.
The Indira, yes, and her husband, yes.
Okay.
Good catch.
Okay.
Good question. Obviously. What else?
Else we get hours of operation. Saturday, Sunday hours, I think that's where we at. I don't really have any other questions.
Okay.
It'd just be helpful to see, I think, the organization of Maya Grill
Mhm.
you know, where they're not here in person.
Yeah.
But if, Sandy, if you've looked at it and it's the same, then I guess I'm good with it.
Okay. Are you fine with them not being here, Maureen?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm as well having, I think if we hadn't met them previously, then I would obviously want to meet any owner coming into town to offer our support and just get to meet them. But I think given that we've met these folks, they seemed great and I'm happy to extend this license. Okay. Are you okay with that? I'm also fine to have them come back.
Let's go ahead. If Maureen, if you want a motion.
Sure. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the transfer of all alcoholic beverage license and issuance of common victual license submitted by Maya Grill LLC for 118 Main Street, Upton.
Second the motion.
I think we need to amend that just to be the liquor license.
Because we have the separate hearing on.
Right, we haven't opened the second hearing.
You want to open the second hearing and do them both at the same time? No. Let me amend that. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the transfer of all alcohol beverage license submitted by Maya Grill LLC for 118 Main Street, Upton.
I would second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, unanimous action of the board. I will close the public hearing. Before I close the public hearing, are there any questions for folks on the phone? Should have done that earlier. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing. We are going to open a public hearing for the common victualer's license. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138, Section 15A of the Mass General Law that a public hearing will be held on Tuesday, January 10th, 2023 at 7:05 p.m. at the Town Hall, 1 Main Street, Upton, Mass. on the application of Maya Grill LLC at 118 Main Street, Upton, Mass. for a common victualer's license to cook, prepare, and serve food. All right. Questions on this one? I think we covered the ownership, the folks, any material changes or questions that you have on this one?
I do not.
Okay. Take a motion.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the transfer and issuance of common victual license submitted by Maya Grill LLC for 118 Main Street, Upton.
I would second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Passes by unanimous action of the board. Any public comments? Public hearing. Next on the agenda, we have the town manager report.
So, off to a busy start in calendar year 2023. Residents should notice that the town clerk's office, they should be getting dog license renewals as well as the annual town census. So I encourage people to take care of those as soon as possible. And just a reminder to residents, this is the town census, not federal census. Nomination papers are also being worked on and will be available in February. Town clerk did want to highlight that this will be a large list of elected positions because not only do you have the positions that are typically up, say, one every year for a three-member board, but we also this past year filled a number of vacancies. Those vacancies were only until the May election, and then they had to fulfill the remainder of that term and need to pull papers to do that. So we are going to have a high number of elected positions on the ballot. So we're also going to just make sure that we get word out about these vacancies and also these positions, since we have some that still remain vacant, such as Recreation Commission, which is elected, which is still operating with only 2 members. So any ability of people to pass the word, that would be great. Conservation, they're finishing up some enforcement actions against the VFW. This was fill that was done within a wetland buffer area. They've been working along with the contractor for the community center to resolve the fill issue, peel it back and stabilize it. And conservation is getting close to removing that enforcement action. So that'll be finishing up. And also conservation is looking at building a bridge over Warren Brook on the Robertson Conservation Restriction land parcel. So they're going to be looking for funding, whether grants, volunteer work to try to get that done. For the recreation department, they're actually starting to get ready for summer. Not only working with Sandy to advertise for employees that are needed to run various programs, beach as well as kids at play, but also on registration, administration tasks, and they are looking at bringing back field trips. This is something that they had put a halt a couple of years ago with COVID, of course. Pickleball and yoga will be starting up in Town Hall. Pickleball next week and yoga in a month. So we're still trying to get some activity back in Town Hall. ESS, Elder and Social Services Department, continues to see a significant amount of need within the community. They've been helping a lot of residents with fuel assistance as well as other types of assistance for utilities, food, and housing. Board of Health is seeing, as we all see in the news, the new variant of COVID is getting uptick all over the place. We are experiencing, we do have a lot of free tests, COVID tests, and a lot of the departments that then have them available at their windows are saying that they are really going out of town hall at a quick pace. So definitely demonstrating a need within town for continued testing. They also are working with the owners and managers at Dunkin' Donuts to remediate mold so that business can open as quickly as possible. The library trustees at their last meeting voted to set date of May 1st as their start of operations of the new community center. For a lot of our planning activities, movers, all this stuff, we sort of need a date. So they voted for May 1st. This allows for some of the remaining exterior work, landscaping, painting that they could not get done, allows that to happen through the month of April, and not get in the way of library starting operations, and also talking with the ESS. We'll of course line opening ESS, COA along with the library since it is a shared space. The assessors recently had mailed out tax bills, but had not included a letter providing explanation on the changes to the real estate evaluation and the tax bills. So working with our finance director as well as the Board of Assessors, we did post a letter on the town's website, and I'm working with the assessors to have the information go out through news and announcements and other means such as social media. It is available on the assessors web page right now. They did identify that they're getting a good amount of calls and foot traffic to the windows, unsurprising, and encourage residents to take a look at their property card, look at their tax bills, contact the Board of Assessors if they have questions, and noted that February 1st is a deadline for abatements. So it's important for people to take a look in case there are any questions or errors that they identify. That's also something I'll be working with them, getting out on news and announcements and social media to get that February 1st deadline out to the community. And then lastly, MassDOT has confirmed Thursday, January 26th as the date for the 25% design hearing. Later on in the agenda, we'll get into more detail on that. But staff is working to finalize public outreach, including direct mailing to abutters and posting on the website so we can get this information out.
Questions?
I just wonder, with that letter not being included in the most recent tax bills, if there's any other way to do outreach to, we can definitely make sure that that gets into people's hands.
Mhm.
Not everyone's computer savvy, especially some of our older residents.
Yeah.
I just wonder if a separate mailing may be too dramatic or would be something that letter, it's
Yeah.
kind of time sensitive. It may not make sense to mail it out in,
Right.
April or.
That's what I'm wondering.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first reaction. Like, would it add more confusion if we sent the mail under separate cover, right? People might be like, oh my gosh, why am I getting this letter from the assessor's office?
Yeah.
So I don't know. But I agree with you that, right? Like, I don't know exactly what the contents of the letter are, but if it's something that people are looking for or expecting, we should try to make sure we get it in their hands and don't make them ask for it.
Yeah, I think we send it every year. It kind of explains the tax rate.
Yeah.
How that was recalculated,
Right.
what drivers there are to the tax bill itself.
Yeah.
So it's usually fairly informative.
Mm.
Yeah, so I guess that's something we'll have to think about.
Yeah, that's something that can talk with the assessing department on that. Just. So yeah, that is something that can look and talk to the assessors about. It is, of course, was an inadvertent error. And one of the reasons why, especially when we have a lot of turnover, some of these sort of standard things that we always do, we want to make sure that we manage it. I mean, we document so that next year we're all set. Believe me, it's now on their radar.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Very good.
You had mentioned the RecCom seat, just one other question.
Yes.
I think do we still have an open seat on Board of Assessors?
Yes, we do.
We do, that's right.
Anything else?
I have
Questions?
nothing else, no.
Okay. All right. Next on the agenda, we have any public comments that folks may have.
Right here. Walking through the door.
I just want to make time.
Exactly the right time.
How you doing, guys?
Take your time. Catch your breath. I know you just came up the stairs.
I think you both might know me from the Nevermind shop across the street, probably most of you. How are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Let me just catch my breath. I lost track of the time. I'm supposed to be here at 7 and lo and behold, mind if I sit?
Please.
No.
No.
Hey, you guys doing good? So what do you call this forum?
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen, yeah.
Okay, so, hello, everyone. My name's Mick. I've owned the Nevermind shop for 14, going on 15 years. And they have one location right there. And my concerns,
Oh, hang on one second. Sorry. Just your first and last name again so that she can capture.
it's M-I-C-K, last name is Lawless, Lawless.
Sorry. Thank you very much.
No problem. And I'm here today to voice potential proposal and some concerns about the vacant church, the beautiful building there. And some time ago, I guess maybe 7 or 8 years ago, Ken Kalicki, great guy, met him. He would come over and visit me every now and again. Really, I had fondness for Ken, and I hope he's doing well. He proposed back then a potential antique co-op in the church building. Sort of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a lot of these are popping up. They're very popular. Worcester, the Cropland Collective, Norwood has one now. And these are antique and do-it-yourself artist genres where they sell their wares or vintage antiques. I thought being a vintage building tied in with the historic committee, and all the other things going on in the town now. We got a beautiful brewery here with wonderful food trucks on a daily basis. Very, just something to look forward to. You've got a new owner on the Rose Garden who's doing a lot of stuff over there. He's turned that place inside out in a matter of 2 weeks. And I kind of feel that the town could really tap into something like this. They're so popular, especially with the younger set. And when Ken proposed the idea to me 8 years ago, I wasn't ready for it. More than ready for it now. My shop, the Nevermind shop right now, is kind of busting at the seams. Kind of need more room. Instead of moving to somewhere, I'd love to keep it in the same location where everybody knows me, where everybody loves me. And, we've just been there going on 15 years. So I don't really know what's, if it's sitting there not making anybody any money, perhaps we could strike a proposal to bring some money in via that building. And another thing that goes along with this thing is there's a beautiful stage in there. Perhaps we could entertain some kind of an artist group, artist center, music lessons, comedy. One of the guys that works for me is a professional comic. He goes on a circuit. He knows many people. I'm a professional musician. I've been playing for over 30 years. I know many people, and perhaps we could incorporate some arts involved into the town. And I see money making. I see potential, and I hope that maybe you guys can follow my train of thought. I do believe that the strike while the iron is hot. These co-ops are so huge right now. The younger set is getting into this vintage. Vintage is a thing right now, and I just see great potential in that building. I'm not sure of its structure. I'm not sure of its problems, but I know the room is there. And when Ken took me in there 7, 8 years ago, I would see no problem in making out 20-foot spaces to get 10 clients paying X amount of dollars a month that goes to you own it, so the town would make some money on it. I think it could curate it very well and make it a positive thing for the town.
Thank you very much. There's a lot of time, effort, and energy that's been put into over the past several years how to handle that building, and we always appreciate any input and ideas that we have. I would encourage you to spend a few more minutes listening to the next conversation we're going to have with the Economic Development Committee about the downtown redevelopment that we're looking at for this area.
We'll do something.
Awesome.
And if anyone needs to get a hold of me, you know where to find me.
Know where to find it. It's great. Yeah.
All right.
We've been in there several times, me and my family, and we always enjoy ourselves. So thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Very
Great stuff.
Good opinion, yes.
Any other public comments on the phone? Okay, with that, next up on the agenda, we have the Upton Center request for proposals. So I'm not sure that's.
It's a word salad in there.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just wrote this further before the meeting. If you want to. So now
One per.
I think just one for everything.
Yeah. Here, you can have mine. You should read this.
Read copies too.
You did. Okay, great.
Excuse me, this is David Brooks. Point of order. Since we have a quorum of the EDC here now, can we call that to order?
Yes, I was about to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I will take minutes until Steve shows up.
Okay, thank you, David. So before we get started on discussing the town center, just wanted to do a brief recap. The EDC is coming up on its 5th anniversary of when the Board of Selectmen formed it. And I put together a list, I typed it up, the committee at our meeting last week. We put together a list of a lot of the things that the EDC has done, specifically geared towards downtown, but some of them impact the overall community. Because a lot of people, when they drive downtown, still see the church.
Can you just hang on one quick sec? Do we need to add this to the agenda, an EDC update, as opposed to just the result of the Upton Center RFP?
Since it's not having to do with any sort of action item, just sort of.
Fine. Okay, perfect. Sorry, I just wanted to make sure we're covered.
Just discussion, really.
Yep.
Just part of the discussion.
Yep, great.
Because, people drive by and they see the church. It looks the same as it did 5 years ago. So there's a little bit of what's happened downtown. So just as a refresher, I'll quickly run through the list. We all have it, but for those who are listening, potentially, we formed in the summer of 2018. The first thing we did was we helped with the recreational marijuana zoning. We then led the visioning process for the town center. That was passed at the May 2019 town meeting. Part of that, we completed a structural analysis of Holy Angels. The EDC supported the purchase and the demolition of 6 Main. We developed a mixed-use zoning for the Upton Center Business District. This directly led to the brewery being able to be located downtown. Created the shared parking bylaw, which we utilized to help place the community center downtown. We've advocated for the closure of Warren Street, championed the purchase of the gravel lot, which also led to the contamination of polluted parcel of land downtown. Completed the town's first economic development plan. We've created a small business directory that has over 200 local businesses listed in it. Led the local rapid response program, working with CARP Strategies. We attained the donation of the 0 Warren Street wooded lot over here. And then we worked with Senator Moore to get a $30K park design grant under the redo program for that lot. We partnered with Mendon and CMRPC for a facade improvement program and another redo grant for $30,000 CBD. Completed the survey and an A&R for the GAR lot, and then received town meeting approval to sell these or transfer that lot. And we're currently working with consultants and town staff on potentially doing a pedestrian bridge over Center Brook to allow access from the gravel lot brewery side over to the new playground and VFW ball fields. And on top of that, we have created and issued an RFP for town center redevelopment twice, which leads us to this discussion tonight. So just, we all know, but to recap there, that this is a very active and productive committee here in the community. A lot of stuff has happened downtown, and a lot of the groundwork has been laid to be successful downtown. But our approach to the redevelopment of the parcels right across the street has yielded less than desirable results. Both times we issued the RFP, and unfortunately what turned out maybe not to be the greatest timing. 6 weeks before COVID hit, and then now as we're potentially entering or are in a recessionary period. Each time over 24 individuals registered and pulled the RFP, and each time nobody submitted a response. So that leads us to believe there is a overall interest in doing something downtown, but there are things that are holding back budgets. And so we've done a little bit of research through the former town manager, currently town manager Layden, our town planner. We have found out from some of the folks that have registered there are environmental concerns because people have brought up rightly that you can't develop 200 feet from a brook, which would be the majority of that parcel. Now there's a way we can work with that and do an ANRAD, which will outline what the developable land is, and we can do that in-house, being the board and the EDC go to Concom to work to get that done, which help alleviate that concern. There are concerns about the general economy. We had one developer express interest in doing senior housing, affordable senior housing there, but no retail. If what the current economic conditions are, that being able to sell retail will be a challenge. And we feel mixed use in the visioning process that mixed use was very important for downtown. We were told by another developer that the parcel is a little too small. And so for us, that raises the question of, do we continue to put them together? Remember, there's 5 parcels located in that one larger parcel. Do we look to split those out? Or do we look to potentially grow the project by the inclusion of the Ristine building and 6 Main? As we all know, the Ristine building will be partially vacant come later this year. And what's going to be the future of that? So there's a lot of questions on how exactly to proceed downtown. The EDC would like to explore the idea of bringing in a professional consultant moderator to help us through a additional visioning exercise, not for the entire downtown, but for what does the town want the church building to become? What do we want the Racine building to become? The original 2019 vision talked about a preference to save the church. It talked about wanting mixed-use development downtown, a preference for affordable housing. But at no point did it say, this is what we want to do with the church. These are acceptable uses for the church. Because our approach was, we're not developers. Let's not box anybody in. Let's say, in essence, here's a blank canvas. What could you do with this building? Maybe something could be done that we would never think of. That has not yielded any results, that approach. So now we're thinking, do we bring somebody in to help us lead that process into what those buildings could be useful, what the purpose could be for those. But part of that could lead to a desire from the community that the town maintains and rehabs those buildings. And each of those could be quite expensive to do that. And the EDC doesn't feel it's prudent to move down that track and then in essence kind of pull the rug out from the community and say, well, actually we can't afford that, or it's not in the plans to do that. Obviously, we can't commit to that. The group of us in this room cannot approve $5 million to rehab the building, but is it part of the direction that we potentially want to head down? So that's kind of my initial framework for the discussion. And I have some of my other members here remotely. We're also looking for some of the board's directions. We serve at the behest of the board. You appoint us. Our job is to, our mission statement is to carry out the vision downtown. So we've gotten to as much as we can in the route we've been going down. And we think we need to slightly, pivot now and potentially look at saying it might be the town's responsibility to rehab and find a use for at least one of these properties downtown.
So, excuse me, this is Gene Burnett from the EDC. I think what our consensus was in our last meeting is that we really believe that the visioning process was extremely successful in engaging the community. That, if you look back at what's posted on our website, on the town website, for the community visioning process and the number of people that filled the town hall and were engaged in it, we really strongly believe that we need to re-engage the public based upon what we've learned through the RFP process, how the evolution of downtown is occurring. The addition of the community center and the addition of the brewery were enormous changes to the downtown area. The town owns these two buildings, and it doesn't control the other properties that were part of the RFP process. So we strongly believe that engaging the community once again with the selectmen and other committees and boards as are interested in another public visioning process to refresh the vision, restore some sort of sense of direction that's more public driven, that's a kind of a critical point for all of us that serve on both elected and appointed boards, that we do serve the public and we serve the public vision. And that public vision has been very strong in advancing a lot of these things like the zoning change that was enabling for a lot of what's already happened, and also brought, forward the whole, really put some drive behind bringing the community center downtown. So we're just asking to restore the enthusiasm through a public process and restore the visioning concepts, or refresh the vision concepts and adapt them to what the public sees happening now.
Questions, comments?
That be eligible for a public-private partnership?
Talking about which part?
Holy Angels.
Holy Angels. You're talking about renovating Holy Angels.
Yeah, I mean, it would be, especially depending, that's where it really identifies the need for some sort of consensus on the town for what are the objectives we want to have, and then what, depending on those limitations, then what kind of, say, private entity would then be a good partner with us and what could be brought to the table. There are plenty of examples out there. It just becomes a question of what town is looking for and what kind of support may be willing to provide. So,
You think that's something we could look into, or?
I'll perhaps maybe take the opposite end of that argument, Gene. I think the visioning process, absolutely educational, great exercise, some really good things came out of that whole process. But I think unfortunately, and I feel like I get a pretty good pulse of the community. I talked to quite a few people. I've got a lot of friends that are in the trades. They're contractors, builders, plumbers, etc., framers. I think unfortunately, as David, you mentioned, there was interest, right? Over the 2 different times that we went out to an RFP, there was interest. We probably had maybe a grand total of 25 different inquiries about it. But ultimately, I think the problem that we have, obviously it's a very small parcel of land. Second problem we have is the water. David, it's known, we've seen it on numerous documents, that setback to the stream. So that's a problem. On top of all that, the elephant in the room is we don't have parking. And I think unfortunately, obviously the new Council of Aging Library Community Center looks wonderful there. But unfortunately, that's the parking that would have supported this project. So I think unfortunately, we can all sit around and again, people have great ideas. I think mixed ideas are a great idea because I heard that same idea 8 years ago from Ken. That would be a great shared space. Take the Holy Angels and allow somebody to go in there, sell it. Let somebody go in there that kind of knows what they're doing. Separate the electrical services, partition off some space in there, and let somebody go in there and really, maybe a small coffee shop, maybe arts, maybe it is antique, somewhere along that lines would be the best use of that space. Time, having it just hang around, isn't doing the building any good. We spent X number of dollars, I think it was probably 3 years ago. I think the building's very solid. It's got really good bones. I think it's absolutely, without a doubt, in my mind, worth saving. But I just don't think as a community we can do it. I think, unfortunately, we've got to pass the baton. And I think that's really the gem out of that whole parcel, right? Nobody's in a hurry to buy the other arcade building from the other owner and pay that price, right? So we know that's kind of, I hate to say it, but that's really the stick in the spokes. Now, on top of that, we've got a municipal parking lot that we really do need. I mean, I drive by here by day and our parking lot next door is completely full, and that's full when I came by at 1 o'clock today. Now, is it reasonable to assume that all the vehicles in our municipal park that's adjacent to our current library, is it reasonable to think that all those vehicles are there just for the library? I don't think so. I see a lot of trade trucks there, plumbing and electric, HVAC vehicle there. So I think there's a lot of business in town hall that uses that municipal parking. So, I think we should keep that. I think we should keep the Racine building. And I think we should repurpose and at least explore the opportunity. You don't know opportunity costs until you get kind of a bellwether. What's out there? We can, just as we did when I first took office, the selectmen got together and decided we had all kinds of properties and all kinds of surplus goods that were just kind of hanging around out there, on the ledger somewhere. We put all those things out to bid and, garnered, I don't know what the number was, but we'll say somewhere around $500,000. That was just, I hate to say, but just laying around surplus goods. We have the ability to say yes or no. We can put a property out to auction and we don't have to accept it, right? We can put a floor price, we can reconvene and make it a group decision. But I think the next step, unless somebody had some, groundbreaking information out there, I think the next step is to see what are we sitting on? What is that? I consider it an ace in the hole, the Holy Angels building. what can we get for that and what are people's ideas for that building? And if somebody has a great idea to repurpose that for whatever reason, maybe a tavern. Not that we need two breweries, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's, who knows what the next, popular direction in popular culture will be. Maybe it will be whiskey or vodka or some other, maybe a winery. Who knows?
Maybe something not alcohol related.
That's right. That's right.
I think we agree. So, Steve, we're not it's speaking across purposes at all. I think we all agree that, that is one of the things that in the visioning process, everybody wanted to preserve that church. But it's degrading as we talk, over the years. And we need to, if we can't advance the larger RFP concept, then we really do need to focus. I think we can do a lot of things with regards to the Brook issue. Concom could weigh in on this, and Joe could weigh in on this as well. But the perception that 200 feet from the Brook is not usable is erroneous, provided we do what this area of natural resource delineation work that's required there. That would reduce our setback to 25 feet from the Brook, because of the historic uses of the site. That would be a preliminary step that we would want to do no matter what, because as you point out, we need the parking and we need to be able to do work within that zone. I think Joe is much more fluent than I am in the permitting of, issues here, but we are strongly kind of echoing what you're saying. Let's really focus on these two buildings that we do control and try to figure out what's the best use and encourage other people, not the town necessarily, other people to come forward with some proposed uses that work for all of us. And I think we do need the support of the community, no matter what we do, and I'm not sure that without some sort of very focused visioning process that we can get that support.
I think even at a higher level, right, we've tried to go out and do the whole thing twice, and that hasn't worked. So do we want to make a strategic shift, as Steve is saying, and go, let's just focus on the church and tackle that issue, or see what we can get for that? And should we look at Christine at the same time? Should we not? We're going to run into the same problem with Christine if we let it sit vacant. It's going to start to degrade. So that's why we as the EDC think if we do this visioning exercise, we look at both buildings. And through that, does it come out that we sell the church, we keep Christine, we renovate Christine, we put a basketball court in there, or what is the approach to go down? That's a strategic shift from what we've been doing, which was try to do it all as one big development. And do we want to say we can grow it bigger, Christine and 6 Main, or we wanted to step back, kind of separate them out, tackle disposing of the angels? And when I say disposing, right, divesting of it, giving it to a third party to go in and do that. And then just on the concept of a public-private partnership, I mean, Grafton, we can look there. I served on the board there, Joe used to be there. The old town hall is still owned by the town of Grafton. But they have a property manager who manages it, handles the tenants, and they have a long-term tenant on the top 2 floors at Apple Tree Arts who pay, I think, $1 a year, but their lease requires them to bring in millions of dollars over the term of the lease for overall building improvement enhancements. So they helped pay for the new roof on that building, to make it ADA compliant, to put an elevator in. So instead of them paying a big chunk of cash every year, they were able to go out and apply for grants that the town couldn't apply for because they were a nonprofit arts group. So that's a little bit of a public-private partnership. I'm not sure that works exactly for what we want. We have to have that nonprofit to partner with. And the town did, it was a 30-year lease, but they did have an out after so many years. It was either 5 or 10. If Apple Tree Arts hadn't delivered a certain number, they could say, all right, this isn't working, we're going to try something else. But just as we all know, having somebody in the building does so much to keep it somebody's there to notice the water's leaking versus 3 weeks go by of water leaking in and then it's exponentially up the damage.
Right. Keeping the space heated, just think of the benefits right there, right? Instead of at nighttime it dropping down to whatever it drops to, right? It would stay at 60 degrees or thereabouts.
Now, one other thing that I take it for granted, but just to put it out there, if we do go down this professional visioning exercise, there is a dollar figure associated with that. So I don't know if you guys
So-
Joe to get a dollar figure.
No.
Yeah, so.
So a couple of, reflections. I think I don't disagree with what anyone is saying from, our guest speaker all the way through to the Economic Development Committee to, Steve and Maureen, what you guys are saying, right? We've all been around this long enough from the get-go to sort of know where we stand. I think that we absolutely, whatever's done is going to require public support and public engagement to some degree. I would say a couple of things. I mean, obviously, I echo Steve's mindset and I think others, right? Like if we can preserve the church, we've known that from day one. Let's try to do that. I think that would be, and if we can do that with private funding by selling someone the church that's got a vision for how to use it and how to create a space there for whatever they want, I think that's great. If it can be mixed use, great. If it can be something that attracts people downtown, great. But I don't even know that that's essential. I think that if someone says, we can take it, we're going to invest the money to turn it into something else that maybe even isn't public related, I think that would be okay too. So I'm with you on that. I don't think personally that expanding the RFP to include Racine and 6 Main, like that just starts to get so unruly because then you've got to deal with Grove Street and basically you've got 2 parcels. So then you're looking at like, are you trying to move the tip of Grove Street with the tip project? That's not going to happen. Is it any better for a developer if they've got 2 small parcels instead of 1 small parcel? I don't know. They get some economy because they've got their trucks there and their crews there, but I don't know. It's not like we're saying, hey, you can take this and make it one big development because we have Grove Street, which we know can't be rerouted. And I don't also necessarily think that having a redevelopment of that large of a parcel is going to be a great thing. It seems like a lot. So I don't support going like in the bigger direction. I think I'm more echoing what you all are saying, which is like, let's go more targeted. Let's go more focused. Let's focus on Holy Angels and be pragmatic about what we're doing with Racine. And if we can, rent something out temporarily in Racine to get a tenant in there, great. If, that because it's a usable building, right? So that's that part of it. In terms of the workshop and the revisioning and all that, I think that we have enough, my view is we have enough information based on what we learned from the first visioning exercise, what we've learned as a team of EDC and sort of folks in the room here over the past few years, what we've learned, and to come up with sort of a proposal, a recommendation, some ideation and some clarity around what the next step is, and certainly open that to feedback. But I don't know that recasting a totally broad net to say, let's bring in 150 people and let's brainstorm what we could do in the center of town. I mean, we know what people want in the center of town, right? So I don't know that, and maybe that's not what you were talking about, right? I think we can present ideas, come up with a list of 3 or 4 options and get people's feedback on that. That makes sense. So I don't know what you guys think about any of that.
I would agree with that because if you bring in a whole other committee all over again, how long is that going to take? Is that another 5 years? Or?
Well, and I mean, I think that's part of my concern. It's kind of like we did that. It wasn't like it was 15 years ago or it was 2005, right? It was just a few years ago. So I can't imagine that the pulse of the town has changed that much in terms of the general desire for what they want in downtown. And I don't know that we're going to get anything more specific or targeted from a group of, lay folks, certainly, right? Like, I don't know, so I'm not sure taking 100 of people that aren't experts into a room is going to yield a better result, right? We put it out to developers. They haven't come up with a good answer. So,
Well,
Yeah.
okay. We were just thinking actually being even more targeted and more focused on what we're talking about. So we really are trying to like taking what Steve and you are saying and distill that down to let's, what I had envisioned or what some of us had talked about was getting some architectural help, that kind of vision. What can that building be used for? People that specialize in adaptive reuse, not in the global concept of how we're going to redevelop downtown, but a very, very focused activity of what can go in that building, what the utilities would support, what the infrastructure of the building itself would do. And that's it's similar to this whole issue that we found with the permitting, on the environmental side of things. The same thing is, true of a building. There needs to be an analysis, some basic fundamental work that removes the variables and the uncertainties for any developer if we want to bring someone in to reuse that building, right? That's what we ran into with the RFP with this issue around the 200-foot setback. If we had done the work beforehand, several of the people, or at least a couple of the developers that had approached us with interest would have had surety and would have said, okay, now that I have some surety around, the issues around the brook, I know I'm much more willing to go forward. I'm thinking the same kind of thing needs to be done with the church, with Holy Angels. And so I'm really thinking about a very specific, very targeted piece of work, not, multiple visioning sessions, more like professional architectural help that people that specialize in these adaptive reuse projects and come up with some good ideas that will attract those tenants, the tenants that we want.
Mr. Brooks, just a moment. Steve, I think, had a question.
Yeah, I was just going to kind of overlay that a little bit in the fact that I think, unfortunately, right, there's a lot of good ideas and there's a lot of things that you can come up with that we'd like to see there. But unfortunately, they're not always profitable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Engineers draw things up all the time on paper that look great. They actually don't work in the field. So I think, and it happens all the time.
And like anybody that's walked through that building in the past year knows, like, it's completely gutted. There's no electrical, there's no plumbing, there's no heating. The ceiling's falling down, the roof is leaking, it's filled with asbestos. So if that's not a good sales pitch to somebody that wants to redevelop and make a little antique shop, then I don't know, right? So it's like I'm echoing what you're saying, which is like, right, in our heads we can. I don't want to be Pollyanna about it, right? Like the fact of the matter is, it's a beautiful historic building. It's structurally sound. It is a huge investment, a huge undertaking to get it to a point where you could do anything with it that would include a person walking through the door. And so that's a very high hurdle to get over, to create something, to your point, that probably isn't going to make any money anyway, right? You're talking about, any use that we've talked about isn't going to pay for the upfront cost associated with making that building into whatever you'd want it to be. It's just not going to happen. So we need to be pretty realistic about that.
So yeah, I was going to say there's a situation where, on the front end, like we'll say in my business, it's the front end of the deal, right? It could be a loser on the front end.
Yeah.
So it may be a long-term situation where someone's looking and say, okay, I'm going to build value here, but that value is not going to be, it might be 10, 15 years down the road.
Yeah.
But another point I just wanted to throw out there, and I probably being redundant, I may have mentioned this once before. A dozen or so years ago, an owner here right in the center had bought that property and had some blueprints put together, and they were actually thinking about doing 3 condos. I believe they were condos.
Yep.
And ultimately, there were a couple of different issues that were the shortcoming of the project. I think one was sprinkling the building, but the big hurdle that they had, or he had, was trying to accommodate parking.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the town didn't want to provide parking in any of the lots we owned at the current, at that current juncture of time.
Yeah.
But we don't know.
Putting in sprinklers was cost prohibitive when it was a real estate deal to sell 3 condos. And that's when it had plumbing and electrical, and the asbestos was not as much of an issue, and the roof wasn't leaking, right? So if just sprinklers was cost prohibitive to make it a residential development with no parking, like there's still no parking, and the building is going to cost a lot more to get to where it was even those 10 years ago. So, it's going to be tricky, which is why I was partly, right, like in terms of when we lay out options, right, to me, an option is like, let's definitely what you guys are saying, like, let's figure out what that line is, right? Like, let's just put together the line of like, this is what could be developable. There's nothing stopping us from doing that. It doesn't cost us any money. We should just do it, right? That was feedback we got. Regardless, that's going to be information that's good to have no matter what we do. And because it doesn't cost us anything, like, let's just do it and check that box. So that should be sort of priority one. And then I think
Same line, you're talking about the wetland
the
delineation.
wetland delineation, like sort of the, right, like what part of this could we develop along that whole strip? Because that's going to inform the town too. If we think, all right, you know what, we want to do, there are a lot of federal and state programs to reinvest and redevelop historic buildings, right? So if you've got a building that's not going to yield any kind of profit in terms of being a good real estate investment, and I'm quite sure that's what we're looking at, then if you can look for other ways of funding its renovation, then that's what you look for. And there are a lot of state and federal programs to do those kinds of things, but it requires focus and attention. So my view and recommendation would be one of two things, which is, one, let's find out where that development line is just to see like, oh, wait, how constrained are we? But then also really explore the options around some sort of public funding for a renovation. I know in Uxbridge, they renovated a church there. They painted, I don't know what they did on the inside, but on the outside, they had scaffolding up to the steeple. They repainted the whole thing, and it was some sort of a redevelopment, and it looks gorgeous. So I don't know what their model was or what they did, but it was a church that got redeveloped, and I don't think it's a church right now. They're using it for some other purpose. But I don't think that Uxbridge just paid for that, right? I know they didn't. So, maybe there's an opportunity for us to say, obviously, let's solicit ideas from private investors. I would be very surprised. What I don't want to have happen is sell it to a private investor and have it sit there for another 15 years falling apart because they're like, hey, I'm going to get this thing for whatever the basement blowout sale price is, and then I'm going to sit on it because it's a very long-term investment. So I really want to avoid that, but it's worth at least looking at those options and saying, hey, private investors, all right, what are your ideas? And then secondarily, and equally, if not from my perspective, more importantly, look at those public investment options to renovate the building. So, Mr. Brooks, you've been patient. Go ahead, and then Dave has a comment.
As you rightly pointed out, yeah, Mike's on. As you rightly point out, Ristine Building and 6 Square Main were not part of the RFP, but Ristine's going to be emptied out in a few months. And people have already asked me, and I'm sure there are townspeople who will see the whole strip from the community centre to 6 Main as a unit. If they see us starting to work on the church, I would ask the question, well, what are your harmonising plans for reusing Ristine and for doing something with that grass lot right now? That sounds like they'd be biting off more than they could chew, but I'm sure the question's going to come up. What's the town going to do with this other historic building? I admit we have not discussed this in EDC specifically, although it's come up from time to time. I feel we have an obligation to at least have a vision for the whole strip from left to right. Sorry, comment, not a question, but I just want to throw it in there.
Yeah, no, I agree. We've been talking about that a lot, and I think the priority was on, the parcel and the RFP where it is, and looking at Holy Angels and sort of sequencing what we're trying to do and not trying to boil the ocean. So I think there are various ideas that have been tossed around the Ristine building, and I think those are all fair options, whether it's, just sell it, demolish it, renovate it, turn it into, real estate that the town administers like they've done in Grafton, make it into a parking lot, turn it into grass, build something new, sell it to a private developer. Those are all options and things we've talked about, but I don't know that we're going to get clear on that until we first solve the Holy Angels problem, because I think that's a more important and more pressing opportunity than Ristine, because Ristine is up functioning, it's a usable building, and we can maintain it and utilize it versus Holy Angels is, you know, it's in a different category. So
I understand
If
that.
I could just,
go ahead.
Okay, sorry, just,
David.
eventually I want to see some harmonization downtown, but that could take 15 years. I understand that.
Yeah,
Sorry.
David, yep, David Brooks, I just wanted to respond quickly to what you were saying. I'm thinking, and from what I'm hearing in the community, obviously, number 3 Main Street, which was the old dilapidated building, adding that green space to the Racine building is, you know, very appeasing to the eye. And I think one thing we can probably most all of us agree upon is our current town common is rather small. So when you look at towns like Grafton or Hopedale or Milford or, you know, Hopkinton, any of those towns, they've got really nice town commons. So I think personally, strategically, I think it's to our best advantage and our best interest long-term to hang on to the pristine building. And then, of course, the other issue that we have is the Historical Society and the museum that's upstairs. So, you know, I would like to support them. I would hate to, you know, what would we do? You can't just turn them out in the street.
Yeah, and we've always said that, I think, as a board, right? We're never going to displace that museum and what's in there without having another home for them, right? That I think has been, we've said that on day one, we've said it on town meeting floor, we'll restate it here. I think we're all on the same page with that.
Yeah.
So it's a very fair point. I do like the idea, you know, of more green space. It actually makes me think about, you know, we're obviously focused on parking, right? But if we could have someone privately develop Holy Angels and we could take the gravel lot and all that and create some more green space or do something with the Racine building and maintain that green space. Like there's a lack of green space downtown at this point, right? There's the trees and sort of the forested part right next to town hall. But other than that, there's Center Brook and that sort of strip along Center Brook. But there's really opportunity to create usable green space. And I think that's what we did when we took out 6 Main Street. And I think people have really appreciated that. It certainly looks really nice.
Sure.
So anyway, so go ahead, Dave, you were going to say something.
Yeah, so just a couple of points. You know, one thing that we discussed briefly on the EDC, and I think it's been mentioned in one of the meetings, there's going to be a space opening down at Millhouse in the seniors and leaves. I don't know the landlord down there, what they're open to, but you know, could we negotiate long-term lease with the historic museum in one of the most historic buildings in town, right? And it's ADA accessible and everything, right?
Yeah.
Which then frees up the Racine for lots of other uses. You know, one thing we
Great
thought
idea.
with Racine is some type of what I call WeWork, a hybrid work environment for people to come in, or incubator spaces.
Yes.
For businesses, we have over 200 businesses that call Upton a home.
Yeah.
A lot of those are home based, and they don't have conference or rooms or places to meet with a potential client.
Yeah.
As far as the church, so I think we can move forward and do work on the ANRAD, which is delineating the wetlands.
Yes.
And then I think there's 2 tracks we can take at the same time. One being an information gathering track, which both Steve and Brett hit on, which is we could do an RFP for just the church and then tagging on that UGAR lot just to the side of it. And in that RFP process, like we did with the current RFP, we required a lot of information about the bidder and their financial situation. So we could have somebody come in and say, I'll give you $100,000 for the church and I'm going to do this. But then we can also ask for them to present their funding plan. Again, as Steve said, we don't have to accept anything. So we could just be ideas, but we can also look and go, oh, they do have the multi-million-dollar funding plan to execute on this versus they can just acquire the building and then you're going to have to spend a decade slowly putting it together. So I think we could go down that path, take the current RFP, trim it down, take what we need in there, but we're going to ask for what your plan is for the building, what you're going to offer up front for the building, and then kind of like what your financial funding is.
Right, and I don't even know that we could do this, right? But some sort of a timeline or minimum commitment, right? Like it doesn't have to be fully renovated, right? But we don't want to sell it and have nobody touch it for 10 years. But if we can sell it or do something with it or somehow transfer it or divest the town of it and at least have the thing painted and have it cleaned up and whatever, like that would be great, right? I just, at a minimum, I don't want it to be the eyesore that it is becoming. And ideally, it'd be nice to see it restored to its sort of, original historical significance.
But
But
building envelope done, right? So we know
exactly,
animals and water and whatnot are getting on it.
right. Yeah,
But while we're pursuing that, I think maybe the other thing which you touched on, Brett, and we brought up very early, is the building is still going to be a public building. So let's see if we can go out and get some grants and some funding. It doesn't cost us anything, but if we can put a couple $100,000 into bringing the building up, we're not going to then ask somebody to spend $600,000 to buy it from us. We still maybe look for 100 because the town has invested their own money.
Yeah.
But to help with that public-private partnership of not having to pay something on the ground, and they still own that building, right? And they're still on the hook for it, legally responsible, all that type of, it's not on a tax roll.
yeah, it feels like, and maybe we're saying the same thing, right? There's sort of like the private path, and then there's the public get funding from the state or from the federal government or like historic preservation, sort of the public funding path, right? I see those as sort of two distinct paths. And that's what
That's kind of what I'm saying.
Right.
Let's start going down both.
Sure. Oh, yeah. Right.
And of course, we're gonna, sorry to interrupt, just give me 1 second. I was just gonna say, it's gonna give us an opportunity and give the committees, both committees, right? An opportunity to increase the value of the property without spending any of the municipal dollars, right? It's a win in that.
And that's what we're after, right? Because we're going to be hard pressed to go to town meeting and say, hey, we want X amount of money to renovate the church, to, have a couple vendors in there selling their wares, and doing a farmer's market 5 times a year. Like it's, obviously we would all love that. And I think, that's something you could potentially do with the Racine building, because you know what? That building is habitable. And it's not going to cost you a lot of money to get people in there. So maybe that's the place where we say, you know what, if we want a public space for farmers markets, vendors, collectives, small shows, performances, maybe there's a way to do that in the Racine building with this empty space that's going to be there, while we come up with can we renovate the Holy Angels Church with some outside public funding, outside of Upton public funding, or find a good private investor. My guess, not to darken the waters, but is that whatever RFP we put out there, whatever comes, if we get any back, they're not going to be satisfactory. They're not going to, I think we're going to be hard pressed to find somebody that's going to come and say, all right, I'm going to come in and I'm going to fix this place up and do this with it in 2 years. But we can be optimistic.
I think we may get that, but I think what we're gonna probably see, I look at it and say it's a really good, I'm gonna call it a block of wood, right? It's got a lot of value, in my opinion. But I think what's most likely gonna come of it is probably housing. And that probably is not what we're all looking for, right? If somebody comes in and says, I'm gonna put 6 apartments in there or 3 apartments or whatnot, right?
We're not real estate developers. Someone tried to do that already. It hasn't gotten better, right? The math on that one has gone way more upside down than it was 10 years ago when the previous owner tried to do it, right? Like it's gotten a lot worse. Anyway, the point is we should do both in parallel. I guess that's really, at the end of the day, we don't know. We're not investors. We're not developers. We're not small business people, right? Like go down both paths because they both have potential, and hopefully we get somewhere with one of them.
Right. We just got to push. We have to start pushing. We can't be passive.
That's right. That's right. It's right. It's not just going to happen on its own. We definitely need to push in both those directions. Go ahead, Marie.
Of all the proposals that were pulled, all the contractors, the developers that pulled the RFP, did anyone bother to take a walk through the buildings?
So both times in 2020 and just recently in the fall, we put in the proposal a site visit where people could come and meet with Derek, or this time Joe and myself, folks. Both days, nobody showed up. Now, some of the folks that did pull, like, it's public record, right? Yeah. So, like in this latest one, the Neon group They didn't come look at the building, but they're obviously familiar with the overall site. They could drive by. We had a number of developers. The first time there was an individual, Westboro, Arch Communities, I think maybe both times in Marlboro. So they may have been just familiar with the site, but nobody ever even just sent a note in on the side, like, can I come look at the building?
Okay.
So.
All right. Anything else you need from us at this point?
So just to recap, we are going to pursue an ANRAD for all of our properties over there. So the church, knowing the gravel lot would be helpful.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at doing a smaller RFP for just the church, which we'd have to do after we do the ANRAD, but also give us a chance to map out like what size gas lines, or water, or information, whether it supports a commercial kitchen or not. And then we'll probably need to work with, is it Historic Commission that's interested right now? And already like seeing if there's some grants available.
Perfect.
For the building.
Good.
One last thing, because I know it's on you guys talking town meeting warrant coming up. I don't know if this is the town meeting to do it in, but we do not have authorization to sell, lease, or transfer the Racine building. So once the library leaves, if you wanted to rent out space in there, I don't know if we're allowed to do that. We definitely can't sell the building. We have to put an article and go to town meeting. But
To rent it out?
Not to rent it out.
To rent it out. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
to
Doing anything else would be very premature.
I just know going to town meeting though, even though we may say trust, like we've learned, town meeting needs a vision for the building.
Yeah, right, which is why we're not ready to go there in the spring.
That was just want to clarify that we're
Yeah.
not going to put that on for May.
Great. All right,
Good.
very good. Thank you. Did you pick a good meeting to come to?
I did.
Good.
One last thing.
Sure.
I think my shop manager did like to look into this historical, Massachusetts historical buildings for grants available and funding.
Yeah.
You guys obviously know
Yeah.
that, and
Good.
from my perspective, is there anything that going forward I can readdress this? Should I write a proposal, or should I come to the next town meeting? And the person in my situation, putting forth what I did tonight, what would be your suggestion going forward for me in my position?
To potentially do something with Holy Angels Church?
Somebody to make my decision for that accessible and
Yeah.
to townspeople.
Of course, I think that's part of the RFP process that they'll be going through. So the Economic Development Committee is sort of the focus point. Yeah.
The meetings.
So the next meeting of the EDC, Economic Development Committee, is overseeing this. We meet the first Thursday of the month.
Okay.
So I think it's
It's the fourth.
third or fourth.
Fourth.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
And it's here.
We do it virtually.
Oh, okay.
So you can just call us.
All right.
Teams.
Yeah, so if you could just keep an eye on the website, you can get what time they'll be starting, and there's a link right on the website. Just use a desktop or laptop, and you can listen in, and
All right.
that's a good way to stay informed,
Fantastic.
by all means.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Very good. Maureen, did you have a
Just
comment?
one, is it on the National Register of the Holy Angels?
Nobody here knows. We'll take that as a takeaway.
Oh,
I
Craig,
know with the
All right.
old historic district.
Yeah.
To be determined, right?
If it is, it's easier to get the grant.
Yeah.
Did Craig just say yes, it is?
I don't think the building itself is, but I think the whole area is.
Yeah.
The whole
Okay.
downtown area is on the historic
Yep.
region.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming. Appreciate it. Obviously, appreciate all the work as
Mr.
always.
Ross, are we formally adjourned, or do we just drop off quorum?
Yeah, and EDC meetings now adjourned.
Thank
Good.
you.
Okay. Thank you, folks. Next up, we have
Good evening,
the
everyone.
road race application for the Nipmuc 5K road race.
Actually, it's not for the Nipmuc 5K because it's like 9.8 miles. The control sheet is correct, though. It's a road race, Tri-Valley Front Runners Road Race.
Thank you, John.
But the agenda should.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Take it easy. Bye. Great. Mr. Kellogg, why don't you go ahead and run us through your proposal here?
Yes, thanks for having me. Tri-Valley Frontrunners, a local running club representing several of our surrounding communities, is slated once again to host our annual 42nd annual 15K road race, hosted out of the Nipmuc High School facility. We're approved for Saturday, April 1st, starting at 10 a.m. With Nipmuc to host this race. We coordinate also with BVT across the street for extra parking, if necessary there. So we have our typical leadership and organizational members from TVFR teaming with Upton PD. Once again, everybody is very familiar with the logistics of the race. Chief Bradley is wonderful to work with and his whole crew. We provide them our logistics and safety plan, and it's really impressive what he and his crew do to assist with making that even better and bringing new ideas every year to make it safer and just easier and less impactful on the community just during 10 a.m. and maybe 12:15-ish p.m. On the day of the race. So yeah, it's really it really kind of runs itself at this point. This year, once again, will be part of a New England Grand Prix series from USATF, which kind of doubles the size of the race, but doesn't change anything about the logistics of the race. It just brings more people into the community that day. We'll team up with Rushford probably to do some sort of bib pickup and then some sort of promotional event after the race as well. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have Tri-Valley Frontrunners active in the town. We definitely appreciate the support and the engagement and bringing folks here and doing local activities. So that's awesome. Thank you. You have questions?
Just two quick questions on the application. You're expecting 400 runners. Is that correct, Matthew?
Correct. Yep.
Okay. And then the other question is the basic layout and the basic layout of the race and the distance is the same as it has been in years past.
Correct. If you're familiar with any proposals from the past, there was 1 year where we attempted to start the race in the street, right out at the second entrance down the hill. We closed down the road for a time being. It was, I guess, a moderate improvement to the start with just kind of more of a headache in trying to shut down the road. So we will once again, and moving forward also, just start in the Nipmuc parking lot. And the whole logistics really only cause for a brief closure of Pleasant Street for 10 minutes.
Okay.
Great.
Yeah. I have nothing else.
All right. Very good. We'll take a motion, please.
Okay. I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to approve the road race application submitted by Tri-Valley Frontrunners for a race to be held on Saturday, April 1st, 2023 at 10 a.m.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous action of the board. Thank you. Good luck. Have fun.
Good luck.
Thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Appreciate it. Thanks for your patience. All right. Next up, we have the special legislation senior tax exemption certification of action taken at December 20th board meeting.
So within the board's packet, you have basically a summary. At our last meeting on December 20th, we took urgent and emergency action to approve edits to Article 15 from the 2021 special town meeting, creating a tax exemption for seniors. As I mentioned at that meeting, because we could not, by open meeting law, providing 48 hours in advance, we'd have to schedule it for our next regular scheduled meeting, so we can reaffirm that vote that we took on December 20th. So prepared a motion for the board's consideration, and those edits are in the packet in case anyone from the public was curious what those edits were.
Fantastic. Any new questions? I know we talked about it.
No, looks
You
good
good
to
to
me. Just a few small, yeah, just a few small word changes, but other than that, it's fine.
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote to recertify the board's vote on December 20th, 2022 to approve the edits as recommended by the House Legal Counsel to the November 2nd, 2021 Upton Special Town Meeting, Article 15, entitled Senior Tax Relief Special Legislation.
I would second the motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries by unanimous action. Next up, we have our draft annual town meeting warrant articles. So they're obviously in the packet here. Do you want to give us a quick summary, Joe, or?
Sure. So these articles are initial submissions. They're submitted by finance directors. These are basically some of our standard articles dealing with operating budget, revolving funds, cable, and down the list through CPC as well. There is a new one that you may not have seen before. It's on this list, number 13, appropriation of rideshare funds, funds when people within town use it for Lyft or Uber, that tax, there's a fee that goes to the state, and they reassess, and we need to appropriate that. It's short money, but still we need to go through and appropriate it. So we are still working on a number of other articles. I've been given heads up by other committees on articles they're working on, and you look at any of the agendas that are proposed and posted on the town clerk's calendar, you see those are all discussion items. So deadline for the warrant is Friday, January 27th at noon. This was also something we discussed at this morning's staff meeting, so that staff who are working on that and are in communication with myself, are aware of the deadline. So like I said, the dollar figures are, some of them are just using last year's figures and are subject to change. So if there is anything specific that I don't know if there was other things that were on the board's radar as far as policy items. If there are, just let me know so we can get those taken care of. We'll have another review session on the January 24th meeting, again, just before warrant closes. And then, of course, after that, we'll review the articles that were submitted.
Great. The only question or comment I would make is, I know we're going to talk about it just quickly in a couple of minutes, and probably again on the 24th, is the potential for a donation of land article. So that may be one that's in there.
Yeah.
Okay. Very good. Any questions that, based on what's there so far?
No, pretty standard.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate to say boilerplate, but so far.
The meat will be in some of the numbers. So
Yes, that's where it starts with.
Yeah.
At least I do.
Okay. All right. Very good. Next up, we have the 140 tip project update.
Okay. So we finally, even though it was tentatively scheduled for a number of weeks, MassDOT finally distributed their flyer and uploaded it on their upcoming series of public hearings for that January 26th, 25% design public hearing. The assessing department already printed off all the abutters. Sorry, I just heard beeping. I was just distracted. So the assessing department has already printed off all the abutters labels. I'm working with the new planner on pulling together a postcard so we can not only let abutters know of the project and the public hearing coming up, but then also include a link so that people can view the plans.
Yeah.
I know that for a lot of staff, such as emergency response, they've been involved for a number of years trying to influence this project. One of the things I just want to at least show for the board, and no, I don't want to phase right now. Let's share. skip this. I just wanted to highlight a couple items for the board that you maybe want to know about. And again, I have forwarded this off to many of our other boards so that they can start to take a look ahead of time at what is entailed with this project. I put on the screen the pavement markings. This plan, this best shows not only the changes, but then also the pavement markings for the project. This is a very lengthy plan. So it starts at the intersection of Williams and Main Street with some slighter alignment corrections at the intersection, but you can see where they are really trying to channelizing some of that traffic flow. As we go down Main Street, some of the side streets, there's not much of a change. First noticeable change ends up being really in front of Millhouse. I know for a number of years, people have complained, especially with the most recent TIP project, lack of pedestrian activated warning signs. Those are proposed as part of this project. They're also doing a slight realignment of the crosswalk as well. Then we go through the area where the soon, hopefully to be completed in the spring, that TIP project will finalize. Pick it back up across from 112 Main Street. Continue down. The first notable change on alignments ends up being with Main Street and Mendon Street, where you can see they are teeing this up more. This, where my cursor is, that is the existing curb line. So it's intended to slow that traffic as it enters from Main Street onto Mendon and provide more of a perpendicular intersection with Main Street. Continue through, there's really no changes around the school area.
Joe, could you excuse me for just 1 second? When you scroll back up, is that another crosswalk that they're doing just to the, I guess you'd say the northbound side of Mendon Street?
Yes, so this right here, this is a new crosswalk that they're proposing at that location. I should note within the whole corridor, it's not only doing the roadway, but also redoing all of the sidewalks. So all the sidewalks, driveway, aprons, just like with the TIP project that still is under construction. It's full, basically all within the layout improvement. So next noticeable change ends up with Pleasant Street. And you can see, and this is where I understand it may be hard, the existing curb line is in this vicinity. So they are kicking it out. The eastern curb line is right here. So they are pushing this intersection out a good 7, almost 10 feet. It doesn't line up directly with School Street, but it'll reduce that offset some. But it does end up taking away some yard space that is for that property at 32 Main Street. Next sort of noticeable change is introduction of a new crosswalk right across from Country Super. This is an area that I think all of us see the vehicles that are parked in this area, and a lot of people just crossing randomly. Of course, the highlight of this plan really ends up being the roundabout in the center, not only shifting of the roadways, but then also significant pedestrian accommodations both within the town center area, along in front of the Thompson block, that sort of within the layout parking that is separated from travel way that currently exists, that is proposed to go away. Our previous conversation about parking within the town common, within the town center area is going to continue. And I think a lot of people will raise that as part of the public hearing process, because this does essentially reflect taking away parking within the center, and specifically for these businesses.
So well, go ahead, you can finish.
Coming around, oh, and also with this, you have new crosswalks. So for people on the north side of Milford Street and from North Main, they would actually have to cross in this vicinity to then stay on the south side of Milford Street to access the new community center. The next crosswalk is down sort of closer or farther away from the community center, as it is almost lined up with the building that's for VFW.
So in between the VFW and the Rose Garden would
Correct.
ultimately be that
Yep.
crosswalk there.
Exactly. The project will end at Elm Street and Brook Street, but I would like to just highlight for the board that both Representative Meridian and our now former Senator Michael Moore had previously written MassDOT in support of extending this project further on Milford. So that'll be have to be something we also communicate, that we really would like that extended out. Now, because this is also in a section that we're looking at doing the MassWorks project, that may make it easier because we could pick up some of that work through the MassWorks. Because here it's full, you know, in some areas mill and overlay, but in most areas it is reconstruction. Just like what we lived through for Hockington Road. So it will make it easier for us to sort of start the MassWorks at this intersection, proceed up should we receive funding.
Just a couple, I mean, obviously extending this is great. I mean, anything you can do to sort of get at it while we're in there is great. I know, and I'm sure you've all heard, that coming off of Brook Street,
Yes.
that's a blind curve. It's really difficult. People that live there have, I mean, anybody that's tried to do that knows it's an issue, and the residents there have raised it many times. We've tried to come up with ways to solve it. So, I mean, that's one of the reasons it would be great if we could sort of extend this down, because I know that they would be able to solve that in some way. So that would be great. And then with regard to downtown, and we've talked about this, obviously taking away the parking right in front of the arcade building and the Nevermind shop there, sort of that little pull off is one thing, but knowing the focus on parking, and we had talked about this, and, you know, obviously there's no street parking provided for in any of these plans. So, you know, we had talked about like, hey, is that something that could be added in some degree if the town takes over that sort of expansive roadway through the center of town or what have you. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be here the 26th, which is, I haven't traveled for work in 3 years, but that's the day I'm traveling. But that's going to be a really important conversation to have, just to see what possibilities there are to actually have this add some parking, which would have to be street parking.
Yeah. And we'll make sure that we identify for any residents who cannot attend, because it is virtual, this should be recorded. And I'll make sure to get a copy of that so we can post on the website.
Yeah.
But then also that comment period is, it doesn't end on the 26th either.
Yeah.
They typically keep that open for
What
about
time is the meeting?
7 o'clock.
7 p.m.
Yeah.
Okay. And it will be available as a Zoom or
It
WebEx
is,
or whatever.
it is. Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Will there be any in-person participation?
We'd have to grieve the space.
Okay, so
There-
it's not currently planned to be in-person.
Correct.
Okay.
So, they did say that they would print off a hard copy of these plans so that we can
Yeah.
have them at town hall. I indicated that was something that I wanted. That way, at least, I was the point person in Grafton for interacting with the public for the South Grafton Main Street TIP project.
Yeah,
A lot of people don't want to comment in public. They may not even want to email because they may still have questions. That's one of the things we definitely want to make sure that people can know they can come,
Yeah.
look at the hard copy,
Yeah.
and we can help
Give
them
feedback.
with how to comment.
Good.
So.
Even if it's just to satisfy their curiosity, at least they'll have
Totally.
blueprints in front of them that they can
Exactly.
kind of see that.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing.
I mean, this picture should be our new homepage because that's what people are going to want to see. I mean, I'm only partially kidding, but even like maybe a thumbnail or something that's like,
Well,
this is what it is, because everybody's going to want to.
yeah.
This is going to be the biggest thing to happen in Upton in a long time.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
MassDOT should have a cleaned up. MassDOT should have a cleaned up version of this shortly to make a little bit more sense. People might get distracted by all the existing pavement lines and all those things, sort of show something that's a little bit more cleaned up
Right.
for graphical standpoint. I know that they have
Less engineering, more layperson.
Even if they could, right, superimpose and take half of that information off, but show the new curb lines
And
as
the old
opposed to the
existing-
old
yeah.
curb lines, right?
That's what people will be interested in.
Yeah.
So that's essentially the project. You know, this is really exciting as far as
Huge.
everyone knows that we're just a broken record on this. Something needs to be done with the intersection. It's a constant safety hazard. The near misses that happen. Staff, business owners, anyone crossing the street basically knows of the hazard, but this is a substantial change.
Yeah.
And there definitely is some things that we should be asking for assistance on.
Yeah.
And impact to parking is going to be one of those. Understand that as a state route where people are parking in front of Country Super is not permitted parking, that they shouldn't be, but no one's coming through and giving a ticket.
Right.
But when you look at the street profiles, and you see, and hopefully this will show it. Sorry, let's see if I can. This is a bike lane. That makes it real, and that's right up against the curb. Now, as you come down, they're providing separation between the bike lane and the travel way. This is going to be one of the challenges. This is more in keeping with complete streets, with the state's objectives to accommodating bicycles. But that's only, you can see that crosshatch area is 2 feet wide. There is no parking here. That is going to be an impact and something that should have a conversation, even if it's maybe a finite amount of area, some sort of parking. Or we're looking at right off of Main Street, trying to identify another location. But I would anticipate the business owners at Country Super would say this has a direct impact.
Yeah, I mean, and it's obviously the business owners, but it's also all the people that live in town and
Yeah.
go to these businesses.
Exactly.
Right? Like it's a significant impact on the community, not just those business owners. And I think that that's something that we're going to have to be really sensitized to and really, really work hard to find a way to sort of accommodate both, you know, what the complete streets vision and intent is, and also balance that with what the community needs are in terms of parking. I'm sure there's some room in there to accommodate both to a greater degree.
Yeah, I mean, in my mind, I always think of at least 2 areas in town where both sides of Route 140 are utilized for parking.
Yeah,
Right, obviously, the clear one that comes to mind is Country Super.
yeah,
If one side is bicycle lane, that actually, in theory, takes all that parking away from the northbound.
Is it just one side that's a bicycle, 2 sides
Or
of
both
bicycle?
sides. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah.
And I mean,
That's where realistically, what we just leveled at 6 Main.
Yeah.
Could have the state say, you're taking away all this parking, we want to create additional parking.
but we don't
But-
want the green space, but we also
we
need
want the
parking.
green space.
We're gonna have to decide.
On the grass.
Yeah.
But those, that's where, that's
But those
what
are
the
the
public
conversations
process
we
is
set.
for.
Right, and we should focus on getting some kind of street parking before we start volunteering to give them our land and have them pave our grass. Because I'm sure they'll jump at those opportunities to use our land.
But I wonder, they're gonna have a comment period, so I mean, we're
Yeah.
pretty much all in agreement as far as we're really going to be very light on parking.
Yeah.
Even in my younger days, it was legal to park along the town common on both the 140 side and the North Main Street side.
Mhm.
So I don't know if, how much control they have over those two areas.
That's all us.
Yeah.
We can revisit that. It's just
It's
because
not
it's
on
a
the one
state.
Just on 40. Milford, just not on.
I'm just saying, like, in this North Main, this section here,
Yes.
that's under our jurisdiction. We could allow that.
Yeah.
It's one.
I also don't want to lose sight of the fact that, like, obviously in front of Finn and Feather and the new community center and that is an area as well, the pizza shop that's there, right? So there's always people parking there to get in and out to grab the kids dinner and do what have you. So it's certainly the country super, but it's also Finn and Feather. Like anywhere that we see people parking now, to the extent that we can have that amount of parking included and or expand the parking up to the Rose Garden, right? Like if we could have street parking that goes all the way up and past the Rose Garden, that's better, right? Like I know that's a big ask. I'm sure it's not necessarily feasible, but we should be starting with a blue sky sort of mindset of, all right, we need parking. How can we use this project in harmony with what the state's priorities are to try to get some of that accomplished? Because it's really important part of our redevelopment to have the parking. And like so many things, we get one shot at this. When this is done, we're looking at it for 100 years. So let's take advantage of this conversation because this is it. There's a lot of detail here, but it's 25%. So we need to remind ourselves of.
So 135 is a state highway too, right?
It all depends on which section. Are you talking about in Hopkinton?
Well, that goes from Framingham into Natick and comes through Hopkinton and into Westbrook.
Mhm. Yeah.
That is all parking.
It becomes a question whether or not there are towns that say would have the state do improvements that then the town wanted. The town then said, okay, now we are responsible going forward. This may be a state route, but this section, this finite section is now local jurisdiction. And we're then responsible for any future changes. There could be some of those, that would potentially be an option. There are to address some issues, the state will entertain that.
So just to be clear, right? Like if there's an option that would say the town's going to maintain, call it 140 from, Moran's Auto Body.
You could do it from
And do it from the town line to Grafton.
We could, but
we don't want to maintain that much road, right? Like I'm talking about like the downtown, right? Like, so from a parking perspective, right? Because that's what we're trying to do is figure out how to get parking. So if there's some part of this that says, hey, we'll take over the road from just past Moran's down past Gasco and we'll plow that, but can you guys build and accommodate parking in that section when you do the reconstruction? That's a slam dunk. I guarantee you the town will support that.
Engineer
the parking in.
Ask for the big ask, like you said, blue sky, the whole thing, and then we would have to see then about accepting the responsibility of the road.
Exactly. That would be a small price to pay to get that much parking for the town.
I guess we'll have to concur with Dennis, right? See what Dennis thinks that's going to cost.
I mean, and that's always a concern as far as maintenance costs and all those things. And then, for improvements, because we are then using federal funds, that still represents a design change that typically the state doesn't like doing. But when push comes to shove, and my first example would be you allowed it in South Grafton. We raised these exact issues across from South Grafton Elementary School where there's St. Mary's Church. That had always been parking right there. And they built it in. And 122A is state route. It's not local Grafton jurisdiction. So there are precedents. It's just, we just have to push them on. Okay, let's look at the right precedents that work for Upton.
Yeah.
Just not the state. So we can do that.
Yeah. Great. All right.
That'd be good.
Good. Very good. All right. Anything else on that?
No.
Okay. Super. People will be very excited about this. Excited in good way and excited in a
Reserve.
not necessarily good way. Yeah, they may be some reservation.
Right.
But yeah, it's a change.
You can only imagine
The
with
key,
that construction.
the key answer to people that will say, how could you ever consider putting this circle in the center of our town is, what's the alternative?
Right.
We might not love this option, but what's the next option? Because I haven't seen one.
You know, and I was gonna get back to that, being in the towing business, I see accidents all the time, and when this roundabout goes in, I would think there's gonna be a slew of accidents.
Oh,
People are so
yeah.
used to just kind of feeling their way through that intersection.
Exactly. That's a good way to describe it.
As we may think it is.
Yeah.
People seem to be able to navigate it with great accuracy, and we do get a lot of near misses, but it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Next on, we have the donation of land to the town of Upton. So this is what we had talked about last time. I just wanted to keep it on here so it was stayed on our radar. And I didn't know, I know, Steve, you wanted to sort of walk away and think about it a little bit. And I wanted to see if there were sort of specific questions, information that we can get. Otherwise, we can just sort of punt it to the 24th. But I at least wanted to see if there was any new information or questions.
No, I don't have anything new at this point in time, so if you want to punt till the 24th, that's fine as well.
Okay.
And
Okay.
I can't say anything because it abuts me.
Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because and I will say I actually left a message today with the State Ethics Commission to inquire as to, like, for me, because I know, like, you're a direct
I'm not
abutter.
direct about it, but you're pretty
So,
close.
yeah, exactly. But like, right, like I don't directly abut, but it's kind of like, so I want to just check and see, this might end up being your decision.
We can take care of that right now.
Yeah. So,
I got
just something to be aware of, right? Because it is obviously land that's close to both Maureen and I. So we want to be mindful of that.
How odd is that to happen, huh?
It probably doesn't, it's probably not often that select board members live so close to each other and
Probably.
share some common land. Like, there's like 2 houses I can get to through the woods, and Maureen's is one of them.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all true.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other unusual thing, speaking of peculiarities, is the road race. Goes by my house,
Yeah.
goes through the corner of Northbridge, and then
And
goes past both of your
Both of our
properties.
houses, both
Yes,
of our
it does.
properties.
How unusual is that, that you have a road race that
It's true.
essentially
Yeah.
goes past all our
All the
properties?
houses, it sure does. Okay, so one thing we did see is, and I don't know if you guys saw this, was it Mike Penko for Land Stewardship Committee sent an email? Did you send that out to the whole board? I think you did.
I don't remember getting anything.
Or do you
I know
that ring a bell?
He sent something literally this afternoon. I haven't even read.
No, it was from a few weeks ago.
Oh, it was?
Mike
Yeah.
Penko?
Yeah. Anyway, we'll find it and
Okay.
forward it. But he had basically said, hey, yeah, these 3 properties, one of which is the one that's being considered to be donated, have a high, conservation value from like I don't know if it was Concom or Land Stewardship or what his sort of angle was coming in, what he was representing when he said it. But
Yeah.
he did mention that he talked to Bill Taylor about it, and he was
Yeah.
talking to Metacomet about it, and that it was sort of an area of interest in terms of
Like,
preservation. So,
Yeah.
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 Issues. Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bill did get me references or contacts for 3 different companies to then reach out to get an estimate for appraisal.
Because that was part of what you wanted to have is an appraisal for that, if we were going to accept the donation.
I think we had talked about that.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
All right.
Yeah, I didn't see anything from Mike Penko.
Yeah, let's
and I-
make sure we circle.
Yeah, I'll send, I think it literally, he was, then I sent it to the board.
Yeah,
Was
I was
that-
gonna say, you wouldn't have sent it just to.
No, I'll find it and just redistribute, because I think it came in later on that night. I think he
It was-
watched
That's what it was, yeah. Bill
the
Taylor.
meeting or somehow just saw it
Yeah.
and sent it off.
Yeah, so circulate that stuff around just to sort of refresh and then.
Yeah, I'll take a look. I can just go back through my emails and go back to that period of time. Which
Yeah.
I think was basically right.
It was right, it was,
That night we discussed it to begin
Yep.
with?
So the 20th, really.
Right.
Okay.
I can go back to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Let's see. I think that was it here. We already did the minutes. Do we want to go into executive session?
So we needed
Have you
to,
got the motion?
yeah.
Okay. Take care. Good to see you.
I can, if there's anything else, or shall I read that motion?
Think we're good.
I think that's good.
Okay. I would make a motion that the Board of Selectmen vote to enter into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 214, Section 1B, and Mass General Law, Chapter 4, Section 7, Clause 220, 26C, to discuss financial assistance to residents in need and not reconvene in open session. Roll call vote, Stephen Metellian, aye.
Maureen Dwinell, aye.
Russ Simus, aye. Motion carries by unanimous action.